Hey, this is Matt. Once again, welcome back to the review. This is a paid request, this time for DarkMetalSpider. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting a review, a topic, reaction, a commentary, something random, feel free. Either directly to my PayPal you can send it, or join my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box, under most of these videos. And this is for The Cutting Edge, which I had heard of this film for the longest time. I know it got like two or three direct-to-video sequels that I don't think it has anybody from the first movie in it. They're just churning out the name. Because this became a bit of like a cult film that you would hear people mention. And before I get into the movie itself, Paul Michael Glaser, who was Starsky and Starsky and Hutch, he directed The Running Man. He directed this. He also directed Kazam with Shaq. Tony Gilroy, who wrote the film. This is a guy who would go on to write The Bourne Identity, the first three movies, I believe. He also directed Michael Clayton, which is a rather good George Clooney film. He wrote and directed that movie. So it's interesting, like before some of these other films, the first film he wrote, or one of the first films he wrote, was this movie. Now it stars these two people, D.B. Sweeney, who I remember from this alien abduction movie called Fire in the Sky, which at times that's a rather creepy movie, and Moira Kelly, which she voiced Nala, the female lion, in the Lion King from 1994. You also have Terry O'Quinn, who's in the original film The Stepfather, and he's done a lot of movies. He plays Moira's dad. Pretty much the gist of it is, it's the 1988 Winter Olympics, and you have these two individuals. D.B. Sweeney is this hockey player. Moira is the spoiled ice skater that's going to be partnered with someone to do their figure skating. But during that, D.B. Sweeney's character gets hurt. His eye gets a bit messed up, so he can't play hockey anymore. Moira, they're doing this maneuver, and the partner seems to drop her, and they flunk out. So now it's years later. The 1992 Winter Olympics are coming up. No one wants to be with Moira because she's such a spoiled ass. And with at least another, the coach, which I forget the actor's name, but I didn't mind the coach. He needs to find someone. He's getting desperate, so he finds D.B. Sweeney. And he's not sure about it first, but for a bit of the money and also a bit of the pride, he decides to stick it out. And, it's the predictable stuff. They don't like each other. They get mad at each other. Then they start being impressed with each other. Then they start liking each other. One of them, in this case a girl, has a fiance, but he's a bit of a stick to the mud. One's the spoiled princess. One is the sort of blue-collar guy, down-to-earth guy. They're not great in training at first. They get better. They get to the finals. They get to the Olympics, they win, they kiss, the end. So it is sort of the typical tropes, predictable tropes, that there's really nothing plot-wise that's going to catch you off guard. With that said, I did like the film. I did like it. Number one, I thought Paul Michael Glaser did a fairly decent job filming it. I like some of the lighting, some of the ways like the Olympics are showcased, and some of the shots used, some of the ice skating shots. At times, they try to do this. It's noticeable, for example, when D.B. Sweeney's first playing hockey and leading up to him getting hurt. This kind of blur effect to show slow motion, I think that's really ugly to look at. Like, if you want to do slow motion, do it like John Woo, would do it. Not this kind of weird blur effect to show the slow motion. It just came off as cheap. It just came off as, again, my eye was uninterested to look any further. Like, goddamn. So I didn't really care for that. And there are times where you could tell there were a bit more heavy cutting to hide the fact that DB Sweeney and Moira currently do so much. This is shown at the very end when they're doing their bid maneuvers to win. And you tell it's very cut heavy, where it shows this, and it shows this. Shows him throwing her up, and then cuts to this. There's not a lot of like wide shots of them doing this, so that's why it's not as interesting compared to, say, White Men Can't Jump. Very funny movie, but you have these wide shots, a right usage of slow-mo without blur and effect, and you have the wide enough shots to show it's really Wesley making the shots, it's really Woody Harrelson making the shots. So it gets you a bit more entranced in the sporting event of it all. But what made the film work was the chemistry between the two leads. I thought DB Sweeney and Moira, they worked rather well together. Individually, their acting was fairly solid. There's a lot of good bits of dialogue and exchanges between each other. Moira, I mean, she's a spoiled princess, but never got to the point I was annoyed that I start like it's a very thin line. You could easily hate the character to the point there's no return point to even try to like her. Even early on, one of her other coaches like, "Get your ass in the air," and she looks at him and goes, "Well, this will have to do." And she stays away, leans over, and lifts up her skirt to show her panty-clad ass. And I'm like, yay! You're hot. Do it again. And that's what made it work, is that the way the two interact with each other, even their coach, where he's talking to Terry Quinn and goes, "Your daughter, people always worried about her, always coming to bid B. What a bitch." And it says it right in front of the father and doesn't give a shit. And not only are the two actors working well together, which is essential for this kind of love story, not only did it go at a fast enough pace that it never felt boring, it never felt like it was extraneous in terms of the way scenes, they went on long enough to be effective and they went to the next one. The montages, there's some decent bits with Paul Michael Glaser with how he set up certain scenes. Like there's a bit where one of them wakes up and they get to the rink and the other person's there. And then some stuff happens, then you cut to the next person. So it was Moira, and then DB Sweeney wakes up and he tries to get to it, but then she's there before him. Or they're weightlifting and they have this early 90s music that still feel a little bit 80s. And like he's weightlifting and she's weightlifting, he's training this and she's training that. To show that they're on equal terms, equal footing. One isn't better than the other. They're really getting more and more in sync with each other. He's having a hard time doing this thing called the toe pick. He's like, if you think it's easy, try to play hockey, and she's having a hard time doing that. So each one shows the little flaws, shows the little hiccups, also shows a bit of their strengths. And there's an energy to it. And the couple seem like a nice enough duo that I'm not a big romance guy. I don't really go and seek out romantic movies, but there are exceptions that I can like. For example, this, where not just because its cinematography was fairly on point, I know it sounds stupid, but the way the film looked, it looked like a theatrical film. Like so many films nowadays, because they're filmed in such a digital stature, they feel like a cheaper movie because of it. They feel, I don't know how else to put it. Just the way certain lighting was, I like the look of the film. I don't know how else to put it. I know that might seem strange. And it made me actually get involved and care whether these two people were going to get together, whether these two people were, which you know is predictable, but when that's going to happen. You know it's going to happen, you're just wondering on the when it's going to happen. And you have like the sweet realization from Moira of who she is, and in fact she actually demolished her own career before because she's not sure if she really wanted to do this in the first place, or is she only doing this to appease her dad. And she has this lot of self-doubt, and how D.B. Sweeney helps with that. It doesn't get too goofy over the top when it's put in its humor. There are some effective skating sequences, so DB and Moira did have training. There are some good moments with them. It's just once in a while when you have that blur slow-mo effect, or again, especially at the very end, I think because of the more intricate move set, these two couldn't do it, so you had a little bit more editing job, which was a bit more distracting than it should have been. But I guess really at the end of the day, you're caring more about the couple and the romance and less about the sporting event itself. And like I said, I thought both did a good job. D.B. Sweeney, when they did a good job, but then the judges have their own... they're being unfair because we don't really want you, we want these other people. And then D.B. Sweeney's just pissed, this is bullshit, we stare our asses off, and I'm supposed to be doing this. And like I said, a film like this lives or dies on the chemistry of the duo. I can see why this had a cult following, because the chemistry from this duo is very electric. And it creates a nice energy to the proceedings. And then coupled with the fact of, pretty breezy pace. It's just not a film that I would expect liking, but I ended up being charmed by the film. I think that's really what it is at the end of the day. It was a charming little movie that worked out for the best. And yeah, I just see why people would like the film. So, nice job. Nice job. Maybe a bit of that for this changes is thanks to Tony Gilroy, and you see, I'm not a Born Identity guy, but I really like Michael Clayton and what he accomplished with that. Overall, not a bad film, The Cutting Edge. I doubt the sequels are as good. So that said, thanks for watching, man. And everyone out there, you have a good night, good day, good weekend, whenever you see this. And we will see you later. Bye-bye.